Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, a very exciting day today with the information that we have to share with you, especially from the standpoint of our accountability model. But I do want, before I go over the agenda, I do want to take just a moment to acknowledge the tough week it's been in our schools. Not only with the tragedy in London and the issues that our school systems are facing there with the safety of students, but also just the epidemic of various threats that are occurring in our schools. As a matter of fact, we've been working on a press release with the Secretary of, with the Ed Cabinet and Labor to put out a press release of our own about this. But I also want to just really acknowledge too that oftentimes your chair can be the loneliest one in the district, especially in times like this. But I want to encourage you. What I mean by that is I want to encourage you to let you know that you have 170 other superintendents that are also in your corner. A lot of times when I was going through a struggle or an issue, I could pick up the phone and call one of my neighbors and say, okay, how do we handle this? What do we do here together? And they're always there for you. Also remember that we're here. If there's things that we can do to help you out, for example, looking at NTI and those districts around in Laurel County and around Laurel County, to say we'll approve that. This is a safety concern. So as far as NTI, those are things that we want to help and again, make sure that we're on board with whatever needs to happen to make sure our kids are safe. So again, knowing that your seat is one of the loneliest ones, I fully understand the need to reach out and talk to others. It can be us, it can be fellow superintendents, local authorities. There's so many there that's there for you. So please don't always feel like you're the only one there because you have others that are here to help. And then, the other thing that I've been really impressed with is how you're handling these situations. I've seen so many communications to parents, so many communications to the community through social media. And I've tried to reach out and talk to some superintendents and just try to see if there's anything that we can do to help. But there's been so many threats that's gone on, it's hard to keep up with them all. So again, please know that we're here to help you. And I, again, very, very thankful for the work that you're doing. And I know that every single person on this call know and fully understands that the greatest compliment, but also the greatest responsibility that you're given is when a parent says, or a parent or guardian says to you, I trust you with my child. And I know each of you will not take that lightly. So again, in these type of situations and the epidemic that spreads, once it seems like when there's one threat, there's 5 more to follow. Again, just know that we're here to support you. Your fellow superintendents are here to support you. And again, we want to absolutely be here to make sure our students are safe. So with that being said, I definitely want to acknowledge that, this has been a heavy week. And hopefully the weekend will give some time to everything to calm down. But again, knowing that you're having some tough times here right now as we go through, and know that your commissioner and KDE is here to support you. That being said, I'd like to change the gears just a little bit to talk about our agenda for today. First and foremost, we'll have some welcomes from the, of course, from me, and then also too some updates from Jennifer Ginn, who is our Director of Communications. After we finish there, if we could go on to the next slide, please. We are going to talk about ARP ESSER plans and updates. We'll have Kelly Foster with that. Also, Matt Ross will be here with some updates from the Office of Finance and Operations. Then I have the honor and pleasure of working with Jennifer Stafford. We're going to talk to you about accountability and Prototype 4.0, and then we'll close with some questions and answers from you. So that being said, my portion is to give you some updates as we go through. And one of the exciting things that I've been a part of as commissioner already has been the Kentucky Teacher of the Year ceremony. It was an absolute joy to be a part of this, and I want to thank our Glyptis Ann Jones, Dr. Jones, for the work and the communications team for putting this ceremony together. It was a great time at the Capitol Rotunda. As a matter of fact, we start with somewhere in the neighborhood of a little over 500 applications for the Teacher of the Year. The interview committee narrows that down into three elementary, 3 middle, and 3 high school teachers that are considered as Teacher Achievement Award winners. Then each group has one winner within each level. As you can see, Jennifer Montgomery is an English teacher at Eminence Independent, and she was named the 2025 Kentucky Teacher of the Year, and she was also named the middle school division winner. Barron County also had Mr. Scott Johnson as a finalist from the elementary division. And then Boone County had Haley Dant as a finalist from the high school division. We want to congratulate them. As a matter of fact, our next slide, I think, has some pictures on there. If we could look at some of those pictures, please. As we get those pictures that are up there, we do have several from the Capitol Rotunda that's a part of the presentation. And honestly, one that stole the show was our Mrs. Dant's son, who, when she was announced as the high school winner, he ran up front and just grabbed her and hugged her, and just, it was amazing. And to see as I was reading through the winners and some of the information there, I'm going to warn you that if you ever have the opportunity to present the awards, don't look up, because once they figure out that they're the winners, there's tears that start flowing, and it's beautiful to see, and see the sincerity of each of our teachers, and also the 42,000 plus that they represent. So the 2025 Teacher of the Year ceremony was excellent, and very pleased with what went on there. The next slide, as we get to that, deals with our teacher shortage survey. And I know that there's sitting in your seat once upon a time, so there's the pictures there again. Oh, before we go on to the next picture, you'll see Kevin Daly, who is our 2024 Teacher of the Year. He has a pair of tennis shoes that were signed by Dr. Jill Biden. Then he also wanted Lieutenant Governor Coleman to sign his tennis shoes. So that was an exciting time for our Mr. Daly as we move forward. So next slide, please. This is something that is very important that, again, I pulled this up off the email that was shared a little bit earlier. So I know that many of you that are on this call, that are on this webcast, if you see another survey, that you kind of cringe, but this is another one that's very important. And the reason being is our legislators have asked us for input. And so whenever we get that type of question and we give them input, that also builds some positive rapport, and they look to us for valid information. As many of you know, KEPS doesn't give us that valid information. A lot of times when something is closed, then in KEPS, it's not always pulled off the KEPS system. So it's not easy for us just to pull down the information of how many openings are there. So what we're asking each of you to do is to go into this Kentucky Educator Shortage Survey blank form beforehand, and that way you can review the type of questions that we're asking, that we're going to, again, provide back to legislators. And if at any point that we want to ask for funding, we can refer back to the results of this survey. So once you get that blank form, take the time to answer the last bullet there. It has the Kentucky Educator Shortage Survey Fall 2024 Google form. Please answer that as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Once you get that submitted, we get to that point, I'll do my best to give you a call if somebody hasn't got it completed at the date that's necessary, but that'll be a part of that survey. So again, we really need that information moving forward, and we appreciate any help that you can give us. Next slide deals with our KSB, Kentucky School for the Blind. They just got new Braille reading devices. We're so excited for this for our students here at KSB. They received a shipment of 15 new Braille Monarch reading devices. And again, as you can see, these are cutting edge Braille readers. And then we're very happy to allow our students to have this cutting edge technology to make sure that they're more accessible to the content and what we can provide to them. So again, the 10-line refreshable Braille display feature is a large leap from the previous technology, which only allowed for one line at a time. So we're very excited for our students to have this technology. One other person I should, first of all, apologize to Carter County. We were able to recruit and pull Miss Dr. Jennifer Fraley as our Director of Mathematics Education. Of course, she's worked in KVEC and other districts before, but she was in Carter County, and she's going to help us by overseeing the implementation of House Bill 162, and that's the Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act. So we're very happy to have Dr. Fraley on board, and she'll be, there's a whole process that we're going through this year to make sure that we're ready for implementation next year. But again, very happy to have Dr. Fraley on board as our Director of Mathematics Education. I'll turn it over to Jennifer again for our updates from KDE.
All right, competitive grants from KDE, the usual slide that you hear me talk about. Every super webcast, and from what I hear, a lot of people look at the grants after this is over, so we're so glad that it's useful. The next one is the FY25 Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. Grant applications are due Monday, September 30th at 4 p.m. The award amount varies by the number of students served, no matching funds requirement. This is a rebid opportunity from KDE to award the remaining funds. So if you've applied and met the earlier deadline, you do not need to reapply, and you have been notified of your award already. So if you need more information, please go to the Competitive Grants webpage. You'll see the link there, or email Jennifer Bryant. Next slide, please. The applications are now open for the 2025 U.S. Senate Youth Program. Strongly encourage you, if you have students who think would be a good fit for this, please encourage them to fill out the form. It is a merit-based program that takes most outstanding high school students from around the country to Washington, D.C. We have had some of our students write for Kentucky Teacher when they come back about the opportunity, and it's always that they found it was just a wonderful opportunity for them, and they can't speak too highly of it. Not only do they get the trip to DC, they also each receive a $10,000 college scholarship, which, of course, is a marvelous thing for our students. So, high school teachers and principals, please nominate juniors and seniors. And you've got the link to the application there. And again, the deadline is September 30th. I know we could actually use some more applications for this, more nominations. So please, if you have a student who would fit this program well, please nominate them. Next slide, please. All right, we are also seeking nominations for the 2025 U.S. Presidential Scholars Program. These students also are going to be recognized in Washington, D.C. This is going to be in June of next year. Each school can nominate 3 high school seniors, 1 male, 1 female, and 1 CTE student. You have the link there for more information. You can see schools are encouraged to nominate students who may not be recognized by other programs. So this is a great opportunity to recognize some students that are outstanding but just haven't fit the qualifications for some other awards programs. And you can see for the arts component, students must participate in the Young Arts Program, the National Foundation for the Advancement of the Arts. The application deadline on that one is November 1. So again, if you have students, please encourage them. All right, and next slide, please. We have Associate Commissioner Kelly Foster in our Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, who's going to give you a quick update about ARP ESSER plans. Kelly?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to come on today and remind you about your ARP ESSER plan. Some of you all may have called it a continuation plan, and those are supposed to still be posted to your website and updated on a regular basis. And we put something in the Monday message a couple of weeks ago, and we only had about 8 updates. So that message will run again the next couple of Mondays with the specifics on that. You can also click on the link in the slide for additional information, but we're asking if everyone could please update those plans by October the 1st. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me, or you can reach out to Matthew Courtney, my policy advisor, about that. But once again, it is federally required to keep those up to date and posted on your website. So we've had some reporters clicking on links that it's brought to our attention that those are not up to date. So just a friendly reminder to please do that, and try to do that by October the 1st. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you all so much.
All right, thank you, Associate Commissioner. Next slide, please. Next, we have an Office of Finance and Operations update from Associate Commissioner Matt Ross. Matt, are you with us?
I am. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we got you.
All right. Excellent. First update is House Bill 6 SRO funding. We've received a lot of questions, and not only to me and throughout KD, but I know that the Center for School Safety and probably the School Security Marshal has also gotten questions. Basically, House Bill 6 provided $20,000 for each campus employing at least one on-site full-time certified school resource officer. So it was per campus, not per SRO. That campus list is maintained by the state school security marshal, and I think they've updated it maybe a couple of times. I think our award notifications are actually posted on our website now, but if they're not, they will be up there by the 13th. And in order to request reimbursement, you do a CDIP to this email box, KDESRO reimbursements at education.ky.gov, and that'll be done on a quarterly basis. If you have questions, you can contact me. I'm always happy to try to help and answer the questions, or you can contact Nicole Crosswade or Terry Mason at that number. They are in the Office of Financial Management, and they will try to help you. But I know that we've had a lot of questions around this issue. So if you're confused, if you have any doubts or questions, just feel free to reach out, please. Next slide, please. The second update is on the district compensation reporting. First of all, I'd like to thank all the districts for answering our survey. We didn't really have a good way to collect this information at this time in the school year. But basically, House Bill 6 required us to make a report to the Interim Joint Committee on Education, talking about what school districts were doing as far as certified and classified staff compensation. I think, they included more money in SEEK and asked districts to think about, consider raises for staff. And I think they want to see some metrics or feedback on what districts did.
Matt, if I could interrupt just a second, I apologize. One of the things I wanted to put, this is an example of when we provide information to the state legislature. We provided information for 169 districts. Either one did not complete, one did not finish. And, again, I personally texted each district. So when we send out information to state legislators, it looks great if we have 100%, all 171 to answer. So thank you to the 169 that completed this. But again, we really need 100%, especially on these reports, because there's so many decisions that are made on these. So again, I know there's different reasons why people can't answer these. Maybe there's some technical difficulties, other things going on, and that's okay. That happens. But as close as we can get to 100%, the better. So as we go through these, this is very similar to when we look at the teacher shortage results and making sure we have great information to get back to our legislators.
Thank you, Commissioner. I hate to read to y'all, but I'm going to read to you the survey results. So of all the districts that responded, 54% provided a percentage rate increase, 4% provided a flat amount increase, and then 38% provided a combination. 4% did not provide any raises. 63% provided a universal increase, 10% did it by job classification, and 27% did it by a combination. Next slide, please. For certified staff, 77% of districts provided a percentage rate increase, 7% provided a flat amount increase, and 16% provided a combination. And the average percentage rate increase was 4.14%, and the average dollar amount was $2,805. Next slide, please. For classified staff, 51% provided percentage, 20% provided a flat, 29% provided a combination. And you can see the average there was 3.63%, and the dollar amount was 2022. Next slide. The third update is transportation policy guidelines. The General Assembly amended KRS 158-148 during the last session, requiring KDE to create some transportation policy guidelines, and very similar to the student discipline policy guidelines. Our transportation guidelines sort of incorporate the discipline policy guidelines. It's really just best practices and sort of our thoughts on how districts should create their policies. It's required to be updated or reviewed by districts every 2 years, and that began with the 2024-2025 school year. I apologize. I know districts had a tight deadline to, right as school started. KDE had given a little more time. It took us a little bit longer. We had to consult with various interest groups that were named in the statute. So that took us a little bit, and we appreciate your patience and understand that sometimes you all had to go ahead and roll out some guidelines as school is starting. But you need to take a look at our guidelines and make sure your local policies sort of are compliant with our guidelines. Finally, some good news, our ARP late liquidation extension request. If you'll remember, it was an opportunity to seek an extension for your ARP ESSER funds. Those had to be packaged into one application. So KDE and local school districts all had to go together in one application. And that has been approved by the U.S. Department of Education. So for those projects that were included in the request, they will have through March 28, 2026 to complete expending those funds, those projects. And of course, drawdowns, because of it's a late liquidation, the drawdowns, to draw down funds, you have to have USAID approval. So KDE will request that authorization from USAID to go ahead and make those payments. So I think that's all I have. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Matt. Next up, we have Jennifer Stafford, who's director in our Office of Assessment and Accountability, and she will be talking about our Assessment and Accountability Prototype 4.0. Jennifer, are you there?
I am. Dr. Fletcher, did you want to kick this section off?
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Dr. Stafford. One of the things that I wanted to talk a little bit about was the summit, the Superintendent Summit that occurred last week. With that being said, there were so much great input, so many great questions. And what you're going to see that in this presentation here shortly is we listened. There's going to be some things that we answer questions about. We also take a different look at local accountability within this presentation. But again, that's just proof that we listened to you and listened to the things that you had to say during that Superintendent Webcast. I'm sorry, Superintendent Summit. And I want to thank Dr. Flynn and everyone that was involved. But also, too, just to talk about a couple of types of questions that were answered before Dr. Stafford gets into the presentation. If you were to group some of the questions, the expectation of how quickly we can get results back. So are we looking at a through course type assessment for math and reading and science? If so, do we have to look at changing our vendors? So we try to answer some of those questions that day. So a lot of these answers, it depends. So if we select a through course assessment, would it be a formative assessment for the first couple of tests and then a summative at the end? Or would every single test be a part of accountability? And so those are the type of questions we have to answer as we move forward. As far as the question of, well, we use iReady and we've invested a lot in iReady, would we have to use another group? So the big question there is, what would making sure that there's comparability? So we would have to put out some type of RFP to see what type of program we would use, or would we write our own? Would it be adaptive? But again, it has to align with our standards also too. So a lot of those questions we're listening to and knowing that how the information that we get back in this study phase really helps us on answering the questions that you posed. I will say one other thing that was a huge common theme was let's make sure this is not like portfolios. This is not like program review. And honestly, if I sit and think about that long enough, there's a little bit of post trauma for myself from the days of portfolios and program reviews. But the question there is, what can we learn from that? Is there something some aspect that we can include, or do we want to draw away from any type of accreditation type model, or do we want to have an accreditation type model? So again, our goal is to learn from what we did in the past and make sure that our new accountability system is something that we believe in. But those are the type of questions that we're keeping in mind as we move forward. And I really believe that you're going to see a lot of things here that is going to say, oh, we talked about that last week. And that's to let you know that we're listening. So this study phase, we're going to continue to listen as we narrow down into what our accountability model will look like moving forward. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Stafford.
Thank you, and thanks for being here and the time on the agenda today. Jen, if you'll go to the next slide, please. So the journey to a reimagined accountability system that does include state assessments is shifting, and we've talked about this timeline before. We've been in that prototype development phase, and we're continuing to develop those prototypes. And we're moving now to the study phase. So you can see the circles here on the slide. The goal is to present legislation to the Kentucky's General Assembly in the 2026 legislative session. Now, that seems like a long way away, but it's really not with all the work to be done. So taking into the study phase is this updated document that we've been gathering feedback on. And as Dr. Fletcher said, we've had recent developments and conversations at the Superintendent Summit that have modified that form and that version, even as recently as last week. What it does is it offers actionable phased in approaches to each of the different areas. So in version 4.0, there continues to be choice points around those long-term goals of assessment and accountability. However, different from the previous versions that you've seen, there are no prototypes. Instead, the document focuses on the vision, those stakeholder feedback and what we've heard, options for changes, and in areas of state accountability, federal accountability, assessment, and reporting. So let's look at those big different areas. So Jen, if you go to the next slide. So one of the choice points is around an accreditation style model for accountability. So if the long-term goal is an accreditation style accountability system, the Kentucky United We Learn Council envisions a separate system for state accountability alongside the basic requirements of the federal system that meet all those basic requirements for the federal law. The state accountability system will emphasize transparency along with continuous improvement, so that school leaders, families, communities will have the information around those set of domains that we've talked about previously: academic outcomes, vibrant learning experiences, teaching and leadership, and so forth. Next slide, please. Again, if the long-term goal is an accreditation style system, it will take significant investments to get to that piece and to build the readiness across the state. So looking at the state system, it's a phased-in approach could be taken to get to that long-term goal. Now let's look at that left-hand box. To allow time to build the infrastructure for an accreditation style system across the state, the Kentucky may initially adopt a vibrant learning experience indicator before expanding to other domains. So within the state system, we could begin with a new vibrant learning experience indicators that captures the percentage of students that are engaged in one or more deeper learning and meaningful experiences that we've talked about before, such as student capstone projects, student-led conferences, service-based learning, and so forth. So once that percentage indicator is fully implemented and educators, we give them the time to become better at offering those deep learning experiences, the next phase in that next box could be to include the quality of those vibrant learning experiences in addition to that percentage. Now, this could include that quality indicator could include the accreditation style where schools would engage in the collection of evidence and submitting evidence to an external evaluator. Finally, to achieve the Kentucky United We Learn Council's vision of a separate accountability system model for the state, the additional domains of school quality would be added to that vibrant learning experiences. And again, that would be around academic outcomes, teaching and learning, in addition to those vibrant learning experiences. Now, the next slide, please. So from last week, from stakeholder input that we've seen that peaked at the Kentucky Association of School Superintendents Summit, another approach has emerged that involves that local accountability. So a local accountability model would emphasize the importance of community-driven initiatives and that local decision-making that people are looking for. This approach would provide greater involvement for our local communities in the accountability process so that they have voice in addressing the unique needs of their community and where they can prioritize what's being addressed. A local accountability system, as defined by the Kentucky United We Learn Council, is a set of system management policies, instruments, resources, and practices where district leadership uses and engages school improvement work with their schools. This work generally extends beyond the minimum required components to comply with federal accountability and includes broader efforts of school improvement. That could include such things as parent engagement, community partnerships, and also non-academic considerations of school quality that impact the student experiences that could become then key components to that local accountability system. So it could include common elements across the state. And we talked about the fact that we would have some basic expectations for the local accountability system that would include vibrant learning experiences and those offerings that the students are getting, as well as reporting data by student demographic groups, where there would be need to report each of your student demographic groups and identify the needs that they are having within your education system. Now, the local accountability model approach is to offer a broader picture of the school performance in addition to those federal requirements. Okay, let's look now and turn to the federal accountability system. So if you would change the slide, please. So the approach in version 4.0 for the federal system is to minimize the footprint of the federal accountability and limit the impact that it has on the field. Again, lifting up what the state or local accountability desires and values. So the primary function of the federal accountability would be for public reporting and meeting the requirements of the federal law, of course, and report those disaggregated data by the student demographic groups, and also identifying the schools that require additional federal support and improvement. Now, we've talked about the fact that the state needs to only to meet federal requirements to identify schools in 3 areas. And that is first, comprehensive support and improvement that includes the schools that need to improve the overall performance. So those schools that are in the bottom 5% or have a graduation rate lower than 80%. The second category is target support and improvement, or additional target and support and improvement. And those identifications are more targeted toward those student demographic groups who are performing as low as those bottom 5%. And then the state only has to identify a third category, which could be termed something like meets requirements or some similar designation that we would have to work out. So by limiting the federal footprint, we would reduce those color ratings that is required by the state and only identify those 3 categories required by the federal law. Next slide, please. Again, so another choice point is about reducing that federal footprint. So if the long-term goal is to reduce the federal accountability, so a few actionable items can be that we first continue to meet federal accountability requirements that include like those state assessment results, progress on English language proficiency, and a school quality and measure. Post-secondary readiness at high school and graduation rate would continue to be used in that federal classification. So one additional simplification that would include replacing the change component with individual student growth. Now, I want to note here that you're not going to find a question about student growth in the survey that we're going to ask you to complete, because the last survey, the survey associated with version 2.0, there was good agreement on changing to individual student growth from that change component. So you're not going to see that as a choice point because we're moving forward with that because we've received agreement. However, you will see questions about other simplifications, like whether or not we should keep the quality of school climate and safety survey. Now, we have to include a school climate and safety measure. It just doesn't have to be the survey. So again, that's a choice point in the survey that you'll see. So again, next steps would include for reducing the federal classification would include all of the requirements and reducing those requirements of reporting to meet only those federal measures in addition to what we would do at the state, given those decision points. Next slide, please. So those 2 pieces were about accountability. So the state accountability and federal accountability. Let's look now at assessments. And you know, those assessments, although related to accountability, are different because it's those tests around reading and math, science, social studies, writing, and so forth, different from the accountability measures. So version 4.0 includes the long-term goal of a through-year competency-based model. So think about that, through-year competency-based model as an assessment system. So if that's the choice point, an assessment system that creates a seamless integration into the learning experience, making it meaningful for both the student as well as the educators and their parents. The idea is to provide real-time feedback on student assessments, and so that would provide real-time actionable items that could also include authentic demonstrations of learning that gives students the opportunity to demonstrate the competencies and the essential knowledge and skills that they've learned that are aligned to the Kentucky academic standards and those local portraits of a learner. So let's look at the next slide and look at some possible actionable items to get us to that goal of a through-year competency-based assessment system. So we could start with enhancing the capacity for the development and implementation of locally administered performance-based assessments. We could start with social studies and writing, and we could pilot that and develop the capacity for those competency-based approach that includes those authentic demonstrations of knowledge and skills. Now, we would have to work with a set of districts on providing this, and we would work to refine the skills and the competencies around that type of an assessment system before we could ever move that to a statewide assessment system. So, but we could do that with beginning with social studies and writing. At the same time, we could also develop a through-year model that captures the student learning for instructional purposes in reading and math, and possibly social science. So we could build a common through-year model that consists of a fall and winter interim assessments and a spring administration that would produce our proficiency rates that could be used, that final one in the spring could be used then for that individual student growth from year to year. So the idea here is to replace that interim assessments, and then ideally that would reduce the local costs of your interim assessments and shift that cost over to the state, so that would free up some funds for our local school districts. So shift that state assessment from social studies and writing to the local administration to build that capacity for those performance-based assessments. And then when we would, again, continue math and reading, and science would be then that long-term goal would be a combination of a short standardized form along with that performance-based assessment system. Next slide, please. So all of those decisions around state accountability, federal accountability, assessments would impact then our reporting. So the public reporting would be structured to align with the decisions made regarding those different state and federal systems. So if the decision is to move toward a long-term goal of an accreditation style, for example, or if the decision is made to move to a through course or competency-based system, then reporting would reflect those decisions. So the dashboard then would report both federally required data points as well as those other domains for either a state or a local system. Next slide, please. So the dashboard will feature a statewide comparable data in that to meet those federal requirements. The federal school ratings and indicator outcomes would be reported as required, and then the data would need to be disaggregated by student demographic groups to meet those federal reporting purposes. And then the Kentucky Department of Education would then have to collaborate with districts and stakeholders to create a reporting system that balances the transparency around each of those systems, whether it's the accountability system or the assessment system. So we would work with districts to develop a new data display that aligns to those values that we've set in the state and including the reduced federal data points and introduce those vibrant learning experiences indicator. So the pilot would be established to develop a model for the statewide report card, incorporating input from our local labs of learning and other stakeholders. So this pilot would inform then the design of the school report card moving forward. Next slide, please. So we're happy to present this for the first time version 4.0, as well as that feedback survey and the multiple resources on the website. There's a team of Kentucky United We Learn members that have contributed to each of these, and there's a team here at KDE that's worked really hard to provide these resources in preparation for the release of 4.0. So moving into the study phase. So we're going to take the survey into the study phase and 4.0 into the study phase. Now, the study phase will encompass several factors. Kentucky United We Learn Council members are going to be asked to take an active role in the study phase, as well as each and every district. There's going to be surveys shared with our districts through the co-ops. There are 36 districts who's been invited to be part of an intense focus group. 18 of those school districts are local labs of learning. 18 of those school districts are outside the local labs of learning. There's also going to be some technical reports. We've engaged with our external partners around some technical aspects of these accountability and assessment components. And then, of course, the survey. We want everyone to take the survey. And the last time when we had the survey associated with version 2.0, we didn't get a lot of response. So we really, really are encouraging everyone to complete the survey, because it's going to be very powerful when we go to our different groups, that we have your voice and collectively and be able to report to the Kentucky Board of Education. All 171 superintendents have responded to the survey. So we really are asking you to complete the survey, work with your local co-op to get your voice and engaged with this. So the survey is going to be open till October 4th, and we're going to share the prototype as well as the survey very broadly. The website has multiple resources. The last time that we had the survey, we heard from you, and we heard that it was hard to engage with the components within the prototype because there wasn't enough information. So we've developed an overview for the prototype 4.0. There is videos. Commissioner Fletcher has created a video on that and released it on that website, as well as there's a series of videos that go into depth on each of those big components of version 4.0 that we've highlighted here. So please engage in the conversation. Watch those videos if you have time. Share the survey, discuss with your district leadership, discuss with your school leadership, and really encourage everyone to complete that survey and have your voice heard within that system. I'll note for you that the next steps are then to take version 4.0 into advisory councils. Next week, the School Curriculum Assessment and Accountability Council meets on the 17th. They'll hear about version 4.0, and there'll be various commissioners, advisory councils that will have input on that. The next convening of the Kentucky United We Learn Council is October 21st and 22nd. They'll continue the conversation, and the Kentucky Board of Education will hear an update in October at their October meeting on the 7th and the 8th, just where we are in the study phase. After the board meeting, the next time that we'll engage with actually presenting the responses and the data from the study phase will be in December for the Kentucky Board of Education. So in October, the board will get an update on the study phase. In December, they'll get the results of the study phase. So that's the next process, the next steps in the process. So we really, really ask you to engage with that conversation and make sure that your voice is heard. I'll turn it back over now to Dr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Dr. Stafford. And one of the things, first of all, great job. A lot of heavy lift by you, by Rhonda Sims and our group in OAA. Thank you folks so much for the work that you put into this, and also to our Kentucky United We Learn leadership team, and Karen Dodd and others that have so much input. Sharon Strange. I hate to mention names because we're going to miss somebody. Meredith Brewer. So many people that have put a lot of hard work into this, and thank you for that input. One of the other groups that we're trying to get in front of is the interim joint committee on education with the Senate and House in November. So the reason for that is we want to present data to them also to say, hey, this is where we are, this is what we're learning, and this is a direction that we're moving towards as we go through. So to have input from parents, from all stakeholders, such as parents, business leaders, community leaders, to have teachers, to have parents, to have also to have administrators, to have our superintendents. It's going to be very important to have that as we move into it. So this time of looking at the survey and some other issues, that group of 36, to have that really intense feedback and all the results we can get back is going to be very, very important. The other thing I want to emphasize, as you look at each of these paths, we're not saying that the absolute landing point is on the far right box. There may be attributes that we see in box 1 that we really like. There may be attributes in box 2 when we're talking about the flight paths as you go across. We're not saying we have to land in that final box, but if we go all the way to a full accreditation system, if you will, then this is the box that we're probably going to land in. It's up to you to provide the feedback of whether you believe that that box is where we need to be. And that's why we're trying to get this information back from you. At no point do we have a final prototype, or if you will, or really a final model developed, but we are, as you can see, after getting input from our superintendents last week, we're beginning to narrow down a little bit more of which way are we going with our accountability system. Student growth being one of those great points. We had well over 90% of our people felt like student growth as opposed to change was the way to go. I've had several superintendents talk to me about their concerns about change. And then also too, how do we move forward with it? So again, I want to applaud all of those, the L3 districts and others that have helped us along the way looking at accountability, but also Kentucky United We Learn Council and our external partners for all the work that we are to this point. But now we are in a crucial phase, and that's the study phase as we move forward. So, Jennifer, were there any questions that we have?
So far, we do not have any questions.
Okay. Again, just to emphasize, we do have videos that are on that are out there. I think Jennifer has several videos, and you're going to be able to see some of the answers. There's questions that were asked last week during the Superintendent Summit. Again, we listened, and we're answering some of those questions that we can as we move forward. Of course, some of those answers are going to come out of this study phase, and then we'll be able to present those to you at a later date. A few things just to keep in mind, our important dates coming up, as Jennifer alluded to. We do have our Kentucky Board of Education regular meeting on October 7th and 8th. They will be talking about the evaluation of the new commissioner, so that's pretty exciting for me. But also, too, many other things, including where we are in the study phase of accountability. There'll be other topics as we go through also. Then also the Education Professional Standards Board meeting is October 22nd. So are there any more dates that we need to share there, Jennifer? Or were those the last two?
Those are the last two.
Okay. The last thing I'll say is this. We are releasing a statement with the Kentucky State Police on the seriousness of the threats that are being they're out there that students are and others are putting out. We want you to see that. We want you to know that we're working with the Kentucky State Police as closely as we can to help you as much as possible. But we really need our families to talk to their students and talk to their kids about the seriousness of the threats that they're making. There's also what are the consequences? When I talk about consequences, the charges that students can face when it comes to making these type of threats. And again, whether it be students or adults. Again, a heavy week and a very heavy week, and we're so sorry, but we are here for you. And as I said in the beginning, that superintendent seat can be one of the loneliest seats that you can find. I encourage you to reach out to each other, to reach out to local authorities, to reach out to KDE if there's anything that we can do to help. Thank you for so much for all that you do. And most importantly, thank you for being all in.